Christie. Witney Christie is representing Philly. She's from Philly. And she also did the 10th semester VAT program with me and Rachel. Which means that we graduated in December for our bachelor's, and we're graduating with our master's this summer. And she's going to, she had a concentration in elementary, so her focus is a little different from secondary, but she's about to get you guys engaged in this wonderful presentation.
Hi everyone. As Terry stated, my name is Whitney, and I had the wonderful privilege of working with some awesome first graders, and I learned a lot of information from them. They challenged me in ways that I didn't even know was possible, but they helped me to grow as an educator. And this is just a little bit of what I've learned by working with them. So keeping first graders interested in learning. So as I said before, I worked in the first grade classroom. I was actually one of the few people that had the opportunity to work in the city in Cambridge. I was placed at Cambridge Port School. I had 22 very diverse students in my classroom. So I had students from different countries. I had students who spoke different languages. English was not their first language. I had students who came from different socioeconomic backgrounds. Some parents were professors at Harvard or MIT, while some students didn't come from such affluent backgrounds, which led to their different academic abilities. So we had some students who were able to read like chapter books coming into the first grade, while some students were still learning how to decode words, which means sound out the letters. And with all those things, they had different interests. Some of them loved Pokemon, a lot of them loved Moana, which was like the movie of the summer, of the year. And this was just my wonderful, awesome 22 first graders I had the privilege of working with. So my role and responsibility and expectations this year, I had to lead the mini lesson. So the mini lesson is kind of like the first 15 minutes of the different content areas, so math, writing, reading, social studies, all of them, where I'm introducing a new topic or idea or skill that I want the students to learn and practice. So for example, for writing, I can say, we're going to learn how to introduce your idea. This is how you introduce your idea. I need you to now, after teaching you through a fun lesson, I need you to go off and practice it. But during the mini lesson, I need the students to be engaged, and my concept of what engagement was kind of stemmed from this idea with Skinner, Welbert, and Cornell. A student's initiation of effort, action, and persistence in schoolwork, as well as his emotional states during learning activities. So I want them to be present. I want them to look the part so that their eyes are on me, they're sitting crisscross applesauce, and that they're just listening to me. That's what I expected from first graders. But here's my challenge. Students were completely disengaged. They touched their hair. That was like the thing with the girls. They poked at each other. They laughed all the time. They sat with their thumb in their mouth, which frustrated me so much. They swung their torsos back and forth. Some of them literally just sat with their heads down in their lap. They said this is boring, or I already knew that. And I was just like, I don't know what to do. How do I teach these kids? If this is what they're showing me, how do I get them to learn things in a very interesting way? If this is what they're doing, while I'm supposed to be exposing them to new ideas. And it kind of prevented me from doing things that I planned on doing, right? When I wanted them to go on and try to apply how to write an introduction, I spent a lot of time kind of repeating the same thing over and over again. I kept answering the same question over and over again, and it prevented me from doing my job. It prevented me from sitting down with the kids, pushing in with them, or sitting next to them, and saying, do you know how to do this? Did I teach this well enough to you? Did you understand what was going on? Can I find a better way to teach this tomorrow? And I didn't have the opportunity to do that. So for my inquiry project, I kind of focused on this question: how can I increase student engagement during my mini lessons? So to do this, I did a few things. I observed my students closely, so whenever my mentor teacher or the teacher I was working with kind of led a lesson, I watched the kids' habits. I referred to texts and articles that focus on student engagement. I consulted with my peers, so the lovely folks in my program, and my colleagues as well. I interviewed my students with focusing on very specific things. Their thoughts about how they learn, what they thought would make learning more fun, ways I could make learning better for them, and ways they can make learning better for themselves. Now here are the experimental phases. Dun, dun, dun. So the first thing that I wanted to experiment with stemmed from a comment that one of my kiddos said very explicitly in their interview. I asked her during her recess time, which I was completely surprised for her to come to this idea. I was like, what do you like about school? Or what do you like about learning? Why is it fun? What don't you like about it? And she's like, I hate sitting on the rug. You sit too long and you get bored. I'm like, wow, a 6-year-old was able to articulate this idea, find the reason behind it, and express her feelings. So we made a move. I decided that I wanted to incorporate related and unrelated movement breaks into my mini lessons. So the related movement breaks are things like things that are intentional to the lesson. So if I needed them to kind of focus on spelling words, they needed to get up from their seats, they needed to go get the necessary supplies and come back. That counted as a movement break. They're moving their bodies, they're like, you know, changing their positions. Or something that was unrelated. Let's get up and do 20 jumping jacks. I need you to high five 10 friends. I need you to go and do 12 sit-ups, which was really fun watching them do that. It was helpful because students were able to change their positions, as I said before, but sometimes they became really silly and it was hard for them to transition back into a state where they can focus. So that was my challenge with movement breaks. The second thing that I kind of tried to explore during my experimental phase came from some literature that I read. And it says that interest has been found to play a key role in influencing student learning, behaviors, and intention to participate in the future. So it's like, okay, I know what they like. I need to start incorporating their interest into this mini lesson. As I said before, they were obsessed with Pokemon. I had to take away so many Pokemon cards from these kids. It was a problem. Moana, I now know all of the songs to this movie because of my kids. And Ninja Turtles was like another huge thing for them. They loved it. I kept hearing about all of these things and so much more. And I thought, this is a lot of information that I'm learning from them. Let's incorporate it into the mini lessons. So I did this. In a math lesson, I introduced Ash is from Pokemon. Ash has 12 Pokemon. Misty, another character, has 5 Pokemon. And find the difference for that. They first lost their mind. The first thing they just said, whoa! What? Ash, Misty, that's from Pokemon. It was really cool, it was really fun, and they really kind of honed in on what it is that I wanted them to do, but I can't necessarily integrate their interests into every mini lesson. It's not practical for science, which is really challenging. Social studies to a certain extent, but it's not getting them to do what I want them to do. So the next thing that I decided kind of stemmed from some more research. It says that students are likely to be more motivated and engaged in an activity when they feel they have a voice in how it is conducted and can affect how it concludes. So I need to get student voice. So I shared my power. I gave students more control during the mini lessons. Essentially, I said, all right, you're going to call on the friends during this mini lessons. I'm not responsible for calling on them. So if you see a kid raising their hand, it's your job to do it. Or it's your job to pass out the materials. Or it's your job to write down the information. It was useful. This was helpful in a lot of ways. But the first graders, they kind of took that control to a different level and became bossy and mean. So I kind of limited how I would share the power within my classroom. And by trying these 3 things, I saw some progress, but there were still some kiddos in my class who were just not demonstrating the behaviors that I wanted them to do. So I spoke to a colleague, a group of them actually, because when I see that things aren't going the way that I expect them to go, I get very frustrated and I want some answers. So I spoke to a colleague and I said, how can I get these kids to focus? And she's like, hold them accountable for their actions. Let them know, even though they're first graders, they're kids, but they still know right from wrong. They test your limits and they're going to keep testing your limits, so hold them accountable. And I did that by natural consequences. So if they were taking away learning time, I took away their fun time. And I did that by taking minutes of each and every time that they chose to do something that was ridiculous. And I said, all right, that's a minute. If kids were just completely off the entire time, I said, all right, then you get to stand with me during recess. This was helpful. But typically what happened, the kiddos who kept getting in from recess are the same kids over and over and over again. And what I noticed is that they need to move their bodies. And taking away their recess time is not going to be that helpful. That's the one time that they can just go and be crazy. And I was preventing them from doing that. So my thoughts. In short, each approach had some pros and some cons. When students became used to one technique, they became bored and uninterested. So it's important to switch it up. And I think, and I'm learning different ways that I can switch it up now. But I still have some questions about my research. What the students showed me, they really made me question, what does engagement really mean? My findings disrupted what I understood as engagement. So engagement, as I said before, was sitting crisscross applesauce, your hands are in your lap, your eyes are on me. But some of my students' behaviors, they kind of challenged the outcome. Some students did sit crisscross applesauce and they did look at me, and when it was time for them to go and do their job, they had no clue what to do. While some other kiddos, they touched everything, every single thing. I promise you, I tried to move everything away from them. But they knew what to do and they did it well. So I'm interested in continuing to explore what does engagement look like, what does it mean, what are the different ways that I can increase my understanding of engagement as I teach my first graders at German Parks next year. Thank you. You don't all have to go at once. Yes.
It was great, and other than clearly demonstrating that you have taken on an impossible job in your future, what are your thoughts, or what did you learn between sort of how to keep engagement? The first grade is one of those things that you talked about, those kids who could read chapter books and those kids who are sounding out words, and so engagement can't look the same across that spectrum. Is it expected of you as the teacher to engage everyone at their own level, or?
So that's the expectation.
I get so worried about it, because I'm worried at both ends of the spectrum, and I don't know what one does.
So that's my question. That's still my question that I'm trying to explore or understand. And this was just some information that I gathered. Yeah. I think with first graders, you're just going to have to acknowledge that you can't reach everyone in 15 minutes. But then when I send them to do their independent work or apply what it is that I want them to do, that's the time when I can reinforce what it is I did during the mini lesson. So as long as most of the kids were looking okay and most of the kids understood and most of the kids were engaged, I accepted that as a win. and understood that I can still push in or sit in with the other kids to make sure that they're going to get the information and they can apply it. Because like you said, I had such a diverse group, and I'm going to have diverse groups moving forward, and I can't reach everyone.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I think it was a really wonderful presentation in terms of focusing on what the challenge is. But I think that, here's my question, Whitney. So when you think, this is only 15 minutes in the day, right? So when you think about how you're going to have the whole day relate to that, when you think about expanding it, like during the week, 2 weeks that you took over, how are you going to use that to integrate to thinking about structuring your classroom for the whole day?
Well, moving forward, I would like to introduce some of these things that I did early on in the school year. So something that I didn't say is that we had a very small period of time to kind of do all of this research. We only had like 4 months to really explore ideas, gather information, try it out, and then analyze it. Moving forward, I would love to find different ways that I can structure my day. So maybe in the beginning of the day, we're doing a lot of what they're interested in. And at the end of the day, when they're drained, that's when I'm doing a lot of movement breaks, changing the environment, making things a lot more competitive. Because regardless of your background, kids love to compete with each other. That's what I noticed. So I think structuring my days in different ways, making it like I said, keeping it interactive and diverse and changing it up all the time is going to be important and crucial for the new kiddos that I'm going to work with. Or that's just one way, I think.
I think it's a very good way, and I also think that even the twitches need to have quiet time. So somehow that's part of the task in the first year, right? Is to go from being a little more twitchy to a little less twitchy and being able to concentrate. That's progress, right? Yeah.
Was there a difference in their engagement, however you want to define that, with you versus with your mentor teacher? Did that have anything to do with it?
Not really. No, she kind of noticed the same things, and after observing her for the first month, I noticed it as well, and I brought it to her attention, and she's like, I'm still trying to figure it out, and she's been teaching for 10 years, and she had kindergartners last year, so it was a challenge that we both had, and we're still exploring it together. She's now a great friend of mine, so I'm going to bounce ideas with her, she's going to bounce ideas with me, and see what works. All right, thank you so much.
Okay, so once again, thank you, and a round of applause for all of our presenters and for you guys.
It's great.
Now, it's 10:01, so we finished pretty early, but the next round is going to be at 10:30. You're free to go to whatever room that you may want.
And I think there are refreshments.
Oh, there's refreshments in the hall. I would go to that. Yeah, there's refreshments in the hall right by the Hasselfield Conference Center. Okay, so